Hello, welcome to Crafting with Lee. Today I'm going to make this watermelon themed summer wreath. These are the supplies I'm going to use to make this wreath. That's 21-inch metallic eyelash mesh. I am going to use the pull-through method on this wreath, so you won't need any pipe cleaners for the base. I'm just going to use 2 zip ties. This is a 14-inch wreath frame. I'm attaching it to the crossbar. This mesh is so pretty, it does well all on its own. Alright, after I trim it away, I'm going to zoom in and show you how I start the pull-through method. So I'm going to start on the inner section. There's 3 sections. I'm going to start on the inner one. When you're pulling through, you want to do it as evenly as possible. Once you get the first section started, it's a lot easier. From the base of the wreath to the top, this poof was 6.5 inches. Once you make one poof, you can kind of go off of that one on how you do the others, but I occasionally measure throughout. Okay, so to do the second one, you're going to go to the middle bar, which is the next one over, and do the same thing. Pull it through evenly up to 6.5 inches, and then you can measure them off of each other. And here's a tip: if you have trouble pulling only from the roll, you can twist before you start your next section, and it helps you not pull from what you've already added, because you want to make sure you're not pulling from the poofs. You want to pull from the roll of mesh. And I eventually roll my mesh off into the floor. It makes it a lot easier. After I have the 3 sections filled with mesh, that's when I fluff. And you just grab the 2 ends of the mesh and just pull it out. You can either do it each time you do 3, or you can do it by section, where you just fill up the whole section. I do 2 sets of 3 in each section, so it's 6 poofs total between each crossbar. I'm going to speed it up so you can watch the whole thing, because it's a little different than your normal wreath. I think it's so pretty though. It's really full, and I hate to waste mesh, so it uses the whole roll of mesh. So I didn't have any left over. And you don't have to make your poofs that big. I've made them before where they were only 3-inch poofs. It just depends on what you want to do. And like I said before, this mesh has so many different colors and textures, it really works with a single mesh wreath. The only pipe cleaners I use in this wreath are to attach my sign. And that's just because I don't have any other way that I attach signs. And see there, I just filled up the whole section with all 6 poofs, and then I can fluff. If you do smaller poofs, you might need to add more to each section. These are so large, they fill up really quick. I would suggest not using a really thin mesh. You'll want something that has good coverage, because you'll be able to see the bars underneath, unless you want to really cram the mesh in there. But this one, you can't really see through it, so it's perfect for this The only downside to this kind of wreath is it will hurt your hands, especially when you use the thicker mesh, because it tends to be a lot more coarse on your hands. Now this last section, I only ended up being able to fit 4 poofs, but the first section, I believe I added 3 sets of 3. So I think I have 9 poofs in the first section. So it kind of spills over into that spot, and then you just kind of manipulate it around. And then to finish it off, I'm just going to gather all of the end and zip tie it. So I only use 2 zip ties and 21-inch mesh and a 14-inch wreath frame. So when you add things, you'll use different things to add it. But if you're ever out of pipe cleaners and you still want to make a wreath, you have a couple zip ties, this is perfect. When I first started making wreaths, these were the first ones that I was able to sell, were the ones that I did the pull through. I fell in love with this sign. I found it at Dollar Tree, and I thought it matched perfect with this mesh. I decided to do bows instead of lots of ribbon. One, because I didn't have pipe cleaner sections, and 2, because it looks pretty when you cluster multiple bows together. This is the larger of the 3 bows. I'm doing 1 big bow and then 2 smaller bows that are about the same size. And I'm just using my bow dabber because it's easier. I ran out of ribbon, and all you have to do is just keep making your loops. It doesn't really change anything when you use a bow dabber. Even when you use your hand, just make sure you leave enough of a tail to where it doesn't slide through. I was only going to make a red bow, and then I saw that I had this green burlap. I also picked this up at Dollar Tree, and I thought the green matched perfect with the sign. There's 2 different color greens. There's the lime green and then this green. This wreath gave me a really big headache. I probably spent 2 hours changing things around. I couldn't decide where I wanted to put the bows. I couldn't decide if I wanted to add ribbon, where to put the sign. So I changed things around a lot. I add more to this particular bow, and I add more to the other 2 bows. So I just didn't give up. I kept going. But it was driving me crazy. But in the end, I think it turned out really pretty. Sometimes I can go into making a wreath and I know exactly what I want it to look like. And then sometimes I just start making it and just see what happens. To finish the bow, I'm just sliding a zip tie underneath and loosely attaching it. And then I can just move it over to the middle and kind of arrange my ribbons the way I need it. And then I just tighten it. And now I'm just going to fluff my bow. And like I said, I made 2 smaller bows. I made them the same. They just have smaller loops. This particular bow, I end up adding more to the back of it. I wanted it to be bigger and fuller. I only keep 2 of the red tails, and then I do add 2 green at the end. This is what I originally had, but I do different things to them. Like here, I'm going to add more to the back of the big bow. And I'm just seeing how big I want to do it. And this I'm just doing by hand. It was just something I randomly decided to do. Because like I said, I had been working on it for a while and just couldn't get the placement right. I'm sure there are other people out there that can relate to just being stuck and just not knowing how to continue. I've even left wreaths overnight and come back to them before. And I'm just going to use a zip tie to attach it. And then just fluff this one again. And to fluff, I put my hand inside of the loop. And I move it to where I want it and then open my hand. And this just poofs up the loop. And with wired ribbon, you can put it where you want it. Alright, these are the only pipe cleaners I use in this wreath. And I'm going to cut the back of the ribbon spool, I guess it's called. So the staples won't go all the way through. And then I just twist them. And then sometimes I'll add hot glue depending on how loose they feel when I twist. Those felt pretty good. I decided to add some larger strips of ribbon throughout. I only end up doing 4 sections. And I dovetail the ends of all of them. The method I'm about to use to add the ribbon, you might want to wait to dovetail until after you add it, because I ended up having to recut some of them because it frayed the ends of the ribbon, especially the burlap. Alright, to add the sign, I just feed it through to the back and wrap it around the wire. And then we go back to the bow. I decided to add a green loop in the middle. It just looked way more finished once I did that. And I'm just going to use a zip tie. And you can see I have the bow attached to the wreath, but I changed that later. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to add the ribbon. So I feed through the mesh until I find the wreath form. And I fold the top of the ribbon and I feed it under and pull it up. And the end of this ribbon, I had already tried to put it through a couple times and it really frayed it. So I just started folding the ends before I tucked them under. And that seemed to do the trick. And with this, you can manipulate it to get it exactly where you want it, because it's not actually attached, it's still loose. And I only did 2 at the bottom and 2 at the top. And I was placing the bows on there. They're not actually attached yet. But I tied ribbon around the center, and that's how I'm attaching them to the wreath. I'll show you right here. I cut about a 12-inch strip of ribbon so that it would reach around the bow and then to the base to tie around the back. And I'm just folding it into 3s. And I'm going to feed it inside the green loop and then just tie a knot around the back and making sure they're as even as possible. That just makes it easier when you tie it on the back. And then I just feed it through. I'm going to show you how I did it on the big bow. Once you get the ribbon through the back, you make sure you're around a bar on the frame and then just tie a knot. And then I just kind of tuck the loose ends underneath the wire frame. And then I just go back through and fluff the wreath and the ribbons. And that's it. That's how I made my summer watermelon wreath. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, or you can email me at craftingwithlee@yahoo.com. Thanks so much for watching. And if you like my video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.